there are some really important considerations on the map of where you place these two gateways. So what White Raw is going to do is he's going to place them at these opposite ends. And it looks like he'll be able to put a forge or a cybernetics core here, and he has this little entrance right here where things can come in and out. For instance, when I was two-gating on this map, I used to two-gate right here, and I'd have this little choke, I'd have the ramp, I even have cannons behind here. But this destructible rock was too much of a problem that they could knock this down, and I was forced to build more cannons behind. I almost prefer now to build a gateway here and a gateway here, and then put cannons behind like this. That's probably going to be my number one preference in this spot. But this is okay as well. I'm not the biggest fan of it in the universe, but White Raw is two-gating, chrono boosting, and what do we see Machine do? He does the exact same very, very popular response. Now, a lot of players will do the following. A lot of players will hear what I said. They'll hear me say, you know what? You can actually break up this build and steal little chunks and rearrange them and all this stuff. So, for instance, they'll see 2-gate into 6 warp gate, and they'll say, well, I can go 2-gate expand and do something else because I am doing this change out. But a lot of times people make this assumption that you have to do the early expand after the 2-gate. You know, they'll see you do this sort of thing, where you build 2 gateways here, and if they build 2 gateways at the bottom of their ramp, then obviously they're going to want to expand. Well, you can still go 2-gate and then not expand. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't do that. It's a completely valid thing to do. And that's another cool transition we're going to see White Raw do in this game, is to just throw the idea of expanding before gas out the window. And just to do something that exploits the fact that Zerg is making these roaches. We talked a little bit about this in the Protoss vs. Terran special by White Raw, where White Raw went for Void Rays, forced the Terran to make a lot of Marines, and as a result, could abuse the fact that the Terran had so many Marines. Kind of similar thing going on here by White Raw. Machine is making some roaches, and White Raw knows this, so he's going to continue to be aggressive with zealots, force his opponent to make roaches, and then White Raw is going to abuse the number of roaches that Machine has early on. So here come the zealots marching up. Pretty typical to wait till you have more than one zealot to be aggressive. I don't mind being aggressive at this stage at all. Yeah, I actually really like getting in here and being aggressive. Got to be careful, make sure you're not really attacking the queen too much, or else the Zerglings will deal a lot of damage. Now, I just want to point this out, because I love pointing this out. Notice how the larva popped off right as Zealots 4 and 5 are getting close to your opponent's base. Good timing to know. And right when all 5 are able to be aggressive is generally when all these larvae will be popping out. Yeah, see, right as these guys pop up. Remember how in Game 1 I was saying if this were a tournament cast, I would just be going all, oh my god, is he going to get the roaches up in time? But, after you've two-gated like 100 games, you start to realize that this is going to be pretty typical. But of course, because it's Steps of War, this sort of kooky stuff can happen. Oh, kind of interesting. Uh-oh, Queen's got to be a little careful. But yes, there are the roaches popping out. Now, here's something interesting that White Raw is going to do. Yep, there's the photon cannon going down. I actually am a little bit about this forged photon cannon. We'll see why in a little bit. But interestingly, White Raw suddenly getting 2 assimilators. And also getting a cybernetics core. Oh yeah, and look, no expansions down here at all. Still more zealots being made. And White Raw does have to deal with this one little issue with his wall-in, which is that it can get killed. Always have to be a little bit concerned about that. But what's Machine going to be doing? Going back to the production tab, this is exactly what we were talking about in the last game. You just get a few roaches to be a little bit obnoxious, and then all you're going to be producing is drones and your expansion. So I'm going to keep an eye on this production tab up here. Looks like White Raw was trying to do a little bit of counter-aggression with the zealots to be able to peel these roaches away, and it kind of worked, but, a lot of these zealots are going to end up falling, and if White Raw can keep that guy... Oh, no, White Raw couldn't get it. But wow, 3 gateways up right now. Honestly, what I would probably say, most people would think, if, again, they were watching this in a tournament, is they'd be like, oh, White Raw, he was screwed. He just lost all his zealots, and he doesn't have an expansion up. But Stalkers are so fast that you can abuse the slowness and the short range of roaches in this spot. So Machine really wants to kill this off, but didn't quite pay close enough attention. And White Raw is able to get... Oh, Jesus, is able to get 2 Roaches. That's kind of huge. That he was able to get those 2. But kind of funny that this Stalker did barely manage to stay alive. Now, ordinarily, Machine would want to be making a lot of drones here, but he's going to kind of be forced to make many, many Roaches. And as a result, White Raw, he's just going to blast out a bunch of Stalkers. Is he getting Warp Gates? Nah, just investing everything in getting Stalkers and more Zealots out. And Stalkers plus Zealots are just doom for Roaches early on. They are great against those early on. And I mean, looking at this, you would look at Machine's forces and you would just say, yeah, there's no way that White Raw is really going to be able to break this. But look at how fast these Stalkers are, the fact that you can pick everything off. Stalkers are just such a great unit to get really fast. I was even talking a lot about this in the Protoss vs. Protoss special on White Raw yesterday about Stalkers with Blink, about, you know, if you're getting Stalkers early on, you can be aggressive with them. You can really screw your opponent up. I mean, this ramp is the big control point where you really need to be careful as Zerg, not to let your Protoss opponent get past that, but I mean, look at this, just reinforcing more Stalkers, easily being able to shoot these Roaches on the retreat, picking off Overlords, killing off more Roaches, just doing basic, standard, good micro. God, those Roaches fall so fast. And now an expansion's going down. Extremely late expansion, given what you typically see from a 2-gate. But if you're on a small map and you forced your opponent to make all these Roaches, you can do a lot of damage early on with Stalkers. So now you can probably see why I was saying, yeah, I'm a little bit leery about this Forge and Cannon, because in my eyes, if you could afford a Forge and a Cannon, why not instead get a Cybernetics core and 2 Assimilators really fast, and then when those initial Roaches come to your base from Machine, you just already have Stalkers, and you can just push them right back. I think that's going to be a lot more effective. And look at this, more aggression, pushing in. Zealots to just be able to take a little bit of damage, deal a good amount of damage. Uh-oh, looks like Machine's barely going to be able to hold. But there are just more Stalkers coming. And you know, this is a style of play that I think has increasingly been neglected. I can't remember what game it is I was watching. I think it was a, perhaps it was actually a Protoss vs. Terran that I was watching. Ah, God, I can't even remember. But the Protoss did this weird, funky build where he went Pylon, then he went Gateway 12, and then he went Gas, and then he got a Cybernetics core. No, he went Gate 10, and then he got a Gas, and then he got a Cybernetics core, and he got like another Gateway at 15 and just cut probes. And right when his Cybernetics core finished, he was able to make 2 Stalkers. And as a result, he was able to push with 2 Stalkers really early on. And this ends up being pretty sweet, being able to just do all this damage. And look at, Machine really has not been able to get the best economy up, doesn't have 2 queens, actually has 0 queens up. Non-stop aggression, was able to pull through. A little bit of a problem is that there was no metabolic boost, and that is true. But again, we're talking about how to abuse a player who opens up with all these Roaches early on. The fact that they have these slow units and that they don't have enough creep spread at their expansion means that we can get in with Stalkers and just micro pretty straightforwardly. Nothing extraordinary going on here. It's more just the concept is really awesome. You don't need to be some sort of genius to be able to execute these pushes. So I just really love this style. And look, more Stalkers coming in. White Raw has the expansion up, but hasn't even really made use of it. Doesn't even have Warp Gates up. Hasn't even started with Warp Gates. This really just goes to show you that it is the Stalker that is doing the damage, not, you know, the Warp Gate or any of this stuff. 2 gates right into Stalker. It's going to work great. And again, 2 gate to force him to make Roaches, and Stalkers to force him to lose the game. Yep, and there's the good game. So really awesome, nice play by White Raw, and not too terribly much that Machine could have done to deal with that. Perhaps getting his Roach Warren a little bit earlier, so that way when White Raw moved in with those Zealots, Machine didn't have to run in circles with his drones. You could have gotten the Roaches up right away. But even then, I still think that White Raw could have strengthened his build a lot more by just not getting the Forge and Cannon altogether. Forge and Cannon just didn't strike me as integral to anything at all. So one thing that I personally have been experimenting around with that has been way more successful than I thought it would be is you go 2 gate, and if for some reason you see your opponent doing this 1 base, I'm going to get some Roaches and expand. If you see him doing that, Don't expand, just make a cybernetics core, 2 geysers right away, save your chrono boost, and then just chrono boost 2 stalkers right off the bat. And you end up with 5 zealots and 2 stalkers. And that is a surprisingly difficult mix for a Zerg to deal with early on. When he is doing this, I'm going to get Roaches to deal with 2-gate style response. So we're going to see one last absolutely brilliant play by White Ra on Blistering Sands. That is yet another deviation off 2-gate. So in game 1, we saw 2-gate into just a standard expand and then into warp gate. In the second game, we saw 2-gate zealot into a whole bunch of stalkers before the expansion, and that worked quite nicely. And this game, we're going to see another choice of what to do once you hit the mid-game. Another weird little tactical play that we really haven't seen anyone do. And I really think that part of the reason is because we have too many Protosses who are using Starcraft 1 thing. They're doing too much timing push action. And I'm really starting to feel like